Hey folks, this is not a normal episode of the Catholic Founders Podcast. This is actually a recording of a talk that I gave mid-June at the Catholic University of America. Andreas hosts an annual gathering of Catholic Business School professors to help hash out ways that they can better teach and communicate how to integrate Catholic social teaching into their curriculum in the following year. And given the work that we are doing with Catholic founders and my opportunity to work with all of you, he invited me to speak to that group on the key challenges that Catholic business owners face. Now, I mostly focused on the challenges they face around integrating Catholic social teaching, but the talk is really meant for these professors, so there's going to be some things where it's like, not as relevant to you, but I do think you'll find value in it, especially if you listen to it through the lens of taking many of the things I'm mentioning and applying it to you, because I was really exhorting these professors that they have a particular responsibility to educate and form the future business leaders of America and beyond, of course, because these guys are from all over the place. But you, as a business owner yourself, can actually potentially, take these things and apply them directly to your own life. If you happen to be new here, I'd like to invite you to check out more of our content. We obviously have this podcast if you're listening on the podcast platform, or if you're watching on YouTube, we do publish a podcast every Thursday. If you prefer listening to podcasts and rather than just happening to be here on YouTube, you can go to your favorite podcast player and search Catholic Founders. You can find us anywhere. We also publish every Tuesday morning the Saintly CEO, where we distill our observations and lessons from the podcast into more thoughtful and digestible insights. You can go to CatholicFounders.com/S/Saintly CEO to check it out, and that will get delivered to your inbox every single Tuesday. And then we also have the Catholic Founders Guild, a community of over 150 Catholic business owners, or some people aren't even business owners yet, but they're getting started, that are striving to become saints through their calling to entrepreneurship. You can learn more by going to join.catholicfounders.com. And a big shout out to Our Father for being a sponsor. Go to ourfather.us if you want a project manager for your church-related construction project, and tell them that we sent you. All right, enjoy this talk that I gave at Catholic University of America. Thank you very much for having me, Andreas. My name is Silas Maynor. He did pronounce it a little bit incorrectly, but I'll give it to him. He's Swiss, right? We'll give it to him. But I am from the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. I'm born and raised Catholic, oldest of 8 kids, so traditional Catholic upbringing. We were never rich in terms of finances, but we're definitely rich in terms of family with 8 children in the family I grew up in. But I'm a country boy from the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, turned city boy, as my uncles would say. In 2020, ended up moving out to New York City to take a job as a headhunter. Eventually, I met my wife, so that's probably the best part about that whole journey. But eventually, I went on to found my own company called Earth Search. We do recruiting for the clean tech world, so companies making EV chargers, using biology to do mining. There's all sorts of very interesting companies out there. I've been doing that for 2 years. And at the same time, I actually launched Catholic Founders. It was the Feast of St. Joseph the Worker in 2024. And Catholic Founders is a project with the purpose of, the way I try to summarize it is, we are trying to understand what exactly is the theology of entrepreneurship. Because the way I like to say it, being an entrepreneur is completely different when you are somebody who is Catholic or Christian at least. It is totally different than being a secular entrepreneur. The reason why you would go through the pain and suffering of being an entrepreneur is very different if you are just pursuing money or fame or wealth versus if you're leaning into your co-creative nature, right? We have this co-creative nature in us, and when you understand that and you start to bring into the picture things like the parable of the talents, you start to get a different picture of what entrepreneurship is. It's not just a path to make some money. It's not even just a path to make impact. It's a path to answer your divine calling to be a co-creator with God. Obviously, that is true in the sense of marriage with children, but it's also true in the sense of entrepreneurship. So that's what we're on a mission to understand with Catholic Founders. What it looks like tangibly is we have a podcast and we have a newsletter that comes out every Monday. Andreas has told me he reads it every Monday, so if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is. But with this community, we also have a community that goes along with it. And there's about 125, 130 Catholic entrepreneurs in there. And on top of that, I meet many, many others. And I hear their challenges. I hear what they're working through. In many cases, they're just unfamiliar with Catholic social teaching, despite being Catholics and being raised in the faith. Many of them are not familiar with these terms. So there's many challenges that I get to encounter. And that's why Andreas brought me here. So what I'm going to try to do is present the 10 of the core challenges that Catholic entrepreneurs and business owners have when it comes to integrating Catholic social teaching into how they run their business. And my goal is that this would inform your discussion and your tactical actions in the coming years as you teach, especially as we are in this age of AI, that your knowledge of these subjects becomes practical and tactical for the people using them. Because it's one thing to know things, it's one thing to have data and knowledge, it's another thing to have wisdom. This is something that Pope Leo just wrote about in Magnificat Humanitas. So there is one caveat that I told Andreas I'd only do this if I could plug the podcast. So I'm going to ask you guys, please go to your favorite podcast player and search Catholic Founders and follow us. Hopefully you'll like the content. I'm sure you will. You can check out his episode if you haven't heard enough of him yet. And I'd be open to having many of you on. I would love to work with you guys. We're also always trying to build more local chapters at universities. So if you have entrepreneurship centers at your universities, I'd be more than happy to discuss getting monthly meetups going on. So I'm going to first start, before I get into the 10 challenges, I want to speak about the stakes. So obviously we all are very aware that AI is transforming the world. It is the biggest challenge of our time. And the leaders of the future that are going to shape what the AI world looks like have to be people who uphold human dignity. Currently, they are not. The majority of people leading these AI charges are people who are morally bankrupt. That is my perspective. This is the perspective of many people of my generation. There's a reason why people are being booed off the stage at their commencement speeches anytime, some tech guy is coming up there. We need morally upright people to lead us into this future. The idea is that the current leaders talk about things like universal basic income, all of these things they think are just okay. We know, as Pope Leo just condemned, that universal basic income is not acceptable. You can give some money for a period of time during transition, but work has value. Work has dignity. They do not understand this. They just see work as some sort of negative thing for humanity, but it is not. Technology is meant to serve humans, not for humans to become slaves to technology. And it's very unfortunate that many of our leaders do not understand this. And in some ways, this challenge is the exact same challenge we've had for 135 years. Pope Leo XIII, who founded this university, of course, was addressing this exact challenge in the Industrial Revolution. The challenge, obviously, in that case was primarily man being, in some cases, literally like eaten up by the machinery and spit out as industrial, as a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. And yes, of course, the conditions of working in a factory have substantially improved since then. I come from Wisconsin, where we always joke that some of these manufacturing facilities are so clean you could probably eat off the floor. But that is not the point. The family is more destroyed than ever, right? For 135 years, we're seeing the results of what this did. You break the family apart, who is in primarily agrarian units. They work together as a family. We've all seen that picture of the Angelus, right? The family stopping together to pray. This has been ripped apart and changed the nature of how the families operate. And I would argue that we have not really solved this problem at all, because that's why we see high divorce rates. We have many people not having any children at all, or just the increase of rates of abortion or births outside of wedlock. The family is more broken than ever. And I would argue that the world that we see when we look around is a world in which action has not been taken. It's been many words, a lot of passing off and saying, oh, that's fine, it's legal, so I'm still going to do it. There's a lot of things that have led to this. It's lack of action. And if we want the next 135 years to be different, we must be people of action. Obviously, you are all teaching. Teaching is an action, of course, but your people that you educate and you form in your schools, in your classrooms, are the people to take action. And they need to understand that our faith is a faith of action. So we should be the best people to actually do this. If we don't solve this, I would argue that the AI will just continue this degradation even faster. I do believe that Catholics are the only ones who are capable of actually solving this problem, because we're the only ones who have a moral framework. We're the only ones who have truth. With other, even our Protestant brothers and sisters have some truth, but they're missing the entire picture. So we are the only ones who can actually shape a future where AI and humans can exist in a world where the humans are not trampled. So you all have a very specific calling because of this, because your students are the people who are uniquely qualified to do this. If we want a future with human flourishing, we have to act. Now, I want to especially address this room. I have to admit, I was very excited at the opportunity to speak to all of you, because this is a unique room. Every one of you God chose for your soul to be created exactly when He did. It is not an accident. The parents you were born into, the geography you were born into, all of the things that ended up shaping your life before the age of 5 led you to this profession and into these amazing roles where you have very prestigious influence on people. All of you. And you weren't born 100 years ago or 1,000 years from now. God chose for you to be born at this exact time, to be in these positions during this time of transition and the changing time of age of AI. It is not an accident. And in the coming years, I checked some numbers beforehand, so I think this is correct. Tens of thousands of people will go through your classrooms and be formed by you. You have a very unique calling. God did not put you at another time in history. He put you exactly here to understand these things and to help shape the generation of leaders who will produce an either very positive or very negative world. There's already people going to shape the negative world. So really it's up to you to form the people who are going to be willing to go into the fire and to create a positive world, a world where families can flourish rather than suffer. And it is very possible. All movements start with very small, think about Catholicism, right? You got Jesus and the 12 apostles. And that leads into something much greater. So all things are small. So don't be discouraged by the fact that it will be small initially, and the business owners that you educate will bear fruit in the way they treat their people, and eventually others will start to recognize. Hey everybody, here's a quick word about our sponsors. Our Father Constructors and Associates is a Catholic-owned construction and project management firm. If you're involved in a diocese, parish, school, or religious community, and you've got a building project on the horizon, you need to talk to Our Father Construction. They will help you fund it, build it, execute it, and make sure that the momentum keeps going from concept all the way through to completion. They should be your go-to construction project manager. They will choose the right architects, designers, and contractors, and they'll protect your budget, oftentimes finding you savings where you didn't even know they existed. And, of course, making sure that what gets built actually serves the church for generations, because they genuinely care. They structure and manage projects all the way from $1 to $45 million. To learn more, reach out to ourfather.us or email Christian directly. And I can speak personally in saying, I know Christian, I've known him for a while, he's a very good friend of mine, he's somebody that I would trust with my life and my family. So reach out to Christian, that's CRISTIAN at ourfather.us if you have a project on the horizon and you want to make sure it gets done right. These guys will take care of you, and they'll make sure everything turns out right, and all for the glory of God. And tell them Silas sent you. Now let's get back to the show. I firmly believe that as humans are continually put under the machine and technology and profits are exalted above humans, the average person, because not everybody, the haves and the have-nots, that gap will continue to widen. The have-nots will see what's going on, and they're going to want to work for people who do not treat them as just some means of production, some byproduct. So in other words, they're going to want to work for your students. They're going to want to work for the people that you educate. So there will be an advantage in the future. And even if those people are secular and do not have faith, they will look to the examples that your students set. And I want to point out that we have a bit of an advantage ourselves, because we have the unity of the church and we have the Holy Spirit guiding us. As long as we're open to it, we don't even have to be the smartest. We don't have to have the perfect game plan. The Holy Spirit helps work through us. And the last point here is, it's very important to recognize this is not just about increasing economic opportunity for people. This is not just about increasing the GDP. This is about saving souls, because the way that each of us conducts our lives, including your students and how they run their businesses, they will be judged for that at the end of their life. And so they have their own moral situation to deal with. But also the families that work for them, many, many families, are being forced in this day to choose between getting a second job and barely even having a couple kids because they can't afford it. If your students create environments where those people can flourish, they have the opportunity to take holy days of obligation off. They can be encouraged to go to daily mass. Whatever it is, if those families can flourish, if fathers can be in the home leading properly, we can have a future with better moral outcomes for many, many people. So it's not just GDP, it is saving souls. I'm assuming you guys didn't wake up this morning expecting to get a sermon from a Gen Z podcaster, but there you go. So let's get into the 10 items. The first one is dignity of the human person. How to uphold dignity of the human person. I think we referenced this earlier, that all of these words are thrown around all the time. We think that we know what they mean. We don't really know what they mean. Most business owners, they love the sound of it, but they have no idea what to do. I would argue that there's a couple ways that you can tactically do this, and this is some of the things that I'm seeing members of our community do. And those usually first start with the way that they treat each other, the way that they treat their own family and their own employees. Of course, it sounds very simple, but it needs to be ingrained into their head. They have to start treating their employees with genuine respect and recognizing that just because this person works for me does not mean that they are lesser than me, right? This happens a lot in the offshore industry. I hire overseas, and I hire only Catholics because the Philippines has a lot of Catholics, thankfully. And the people that work for me are very gracious for the most basic things. I'm just giving them basic respect as humans, asking them how they're doing, how their weekend was, and the way they light up is insane. This is happening on other scales as well, locally as well as internationally. So that's the first thing. But it's also about policy. What policies do you integrate into your company that will help uphold the dignity of the human person? Are they being forced to do things that are, turning them into robots? I'll give an example later that might reference to this. But the point is, with the way we treat our employees will change. It is the way that we uphold the dignity. And the way, if we treat them properly, they will treat our customers properly, which will also lead to positive outcomes for the businesses themselves. I just give this example, right? You could sell poison that somebody might buy. It's a free market economy, after all. But should you sell it, right? I don't think so. So that's number one, how to uphold the dignity of the human person. Number two is how to remember that we do not own anything. And a lot of people think I sound, Marxist or socialist when I say this. But we do not own anything. God gave us our very lives. Everything around us is a gift from God. The very earth that we have, everything comes from God. So we are just here being stewards of those things. The parable of the talents is my favorite because it's very related to these things. But I just try to remind people that the master has at his care all of these people who are in need. Some of them are given talents to manage, to increase and make more money with what they've been given. But there are many people who are not mentioned who will never, ever produce more than they consume. They will never produce more economic value than they consume. But the master has his stewards take care of his assets in order to help provide for those people in need. And that's all of our jobs. Anybody who becomes an entrepreneur or becomes a leader in a prestigious company, they have those special skills. They have that ability to create more economic output than they will ever consume. The opposite, right? And they are here to take care of those others. People do not like this framing often, especially in modern capitalism, but this is true. We do not own anything. It all comes from God, and we are stewards. When you think, when this is drilled into people's heads, it changes the way that they run their business. Because you no longer have to focus on how can I just increase quarterly profits and get a nice short-term win. You think about how can I do the right thing for the long term, for eternity, for my own soul, but also for my employees. for my community. One example I like to point out is, for example, if you are investing money into building buildings in a community that you've never stepped foot in, are you going to spend a little extra money to make sure that building's extra sturdy, or maybe got some extra decorations on it so it's beautiful and it uplifts the neighborhood? Probably not. If you live in that neighborhood and you have to walk past that building every day, you're more likely to invest a little extra, right? You may not see the ROI from it, but that's okay because you get to experience the beauty of it. But when everything is a spreadsheet, none of that stuff happens. This is the reason why our buildings are completely ugly today. I feel very strongly about the real estate point, in case you didn't notice. So that's number 2. We do not own anything. Number 3, how do we uphold and promote family life? This is obviously a key tenet of Catholic social teaching, that the family is the core unit of society. And people just don't understand this today, right? It's completely broken. I don't have to give you examples. Leadership has to set the tone, though. This is similar to the first point. Leadership has to set the tone with their own families. This is a challenge of our members of our community. We all recognize that where the first goal is heaven, second goal is our vocation to our families, and then our secondary vocation to the world. It's very challenging to do, but we have to learn that increasing my total sales is not worth it if I have to neglect my family. And it's very challenging to do because we want to have control. We want to believe that whatever we do is going to increase our revenue, but really we're reliant on God for these things. I like to give this example coming back to particular policies that that business owners or leaders can implement. And this is very challenging. I'll get to the challenging part in a second. But imagine you have an employee who has children. One of them has a baseball game that they would like to attend on a day when, maybe you guys would still be open. Maybe it's very challenging because you have to have fewer staff at hand. You should encourage that person to go to their baseball game, their kid's baseball game. What's going to happen? The other employees who don't have kids are going to complain. They're going to say, oh, well, that's not fair. That's not fair treatment. That's not equal treatment. But it doesn't matter because it's the right thing for that person. That single person may have a parent in need at some point. They have a different use case, a different need to be given leeway. These HR policies that kind of broadly characterize everybody and give them one example of how you have to live, those are not, that is the opposite of subsidiarity, right? I believe, I haven't seen it played out super well yet because I haven't found a company doing this, but I do believe if you, regardless if you're talking about your faith in how you run your business, if you can get the employees to learn how to work together, to give leeway to the guy with a son's baseball game, or to the person who has an aging parent who needs some extra help, if you can teach each other, or teach your employees how to help each other, I think it will lead to a more cohesive team and actually better recruiting in the future. The reason why this is not done today is because it's not best practices. Best practices are not Catholic practices, right? Best practices are what private equity bros in vests talk about, right? How do you increase ROI? I do think that there's a possibility we'll need special legal frameworks to actually implement some of the components of Catholic social teaching. I'm definitely not an expert on legal stuff, but I have had a friend of mine say that he's very bullish on the fact that a good lawyer with the use of AI can overwhelm the compliance establishment by just sending them documents and basically getting them off their back. So the whole idea is not about what's right or wrong in that case because it's just compliance. It's just their rules. They're arbitrary. They're not morally, one way or the next. But if you can just overwhelm them with documentation, he believes that you can get around a lot of these things. My solution, for what it's worth, to this whole challenge of how can I learn to accept what I have. I don't have to always have more. It's to pray that we can have a supernatural trust in God that He will take care of our needs. To pray what the Our Father states, right? Give us this day our daily bread. And I believe all Catholic entrepreneurs and business leaders should think of this, and they should pray this prayer. Because if you can relinquish that control, then you can truly live your calling to trust in God. So that's number 3, how to uphold and promote the family life. A Catholic founder is somebody who recognizes that they are called to be an instrument of God's will in the world. We're not building a business for our own sake. We are simply stewards. If that describes how you think about entrepreneurship, we want you in the Catholic Founders Guild. We're growing an association of Catholic business owners who believe in these things deeply so that we can invest in, buy from, and support one another. We do this through our exclusive membership directory, monthly group calls, and our group chat. But there's a lot more to it than that. The Guild has a lot to offer. The cost is only $10 a month or $100 a year. So if you believe that you were created to create, join the Catholic Founders Guild today. You can do so by going to catholicfounders.com/subscribe and upgrade to any paid subscription. See you in the Guild. Number 4 is how to integrate the right to participate. Obviously, as business owners or leaders, you typically get used to being the person in charge. You make decisions your way. You do it how you will like. I started my own business because I absolutely hated having to listen to somebody else personally. So it's very natural for us to want to do things our way without consulting the employees that work for us, without consulting the people under our charge. But this is not in line with Catholic social teaching, because the common good states that the people have a right to participate, especially when it involves decisions that affect them or their work. It's kind of similar to the last point about top-down leadership. The people at the top oftentimes make decisions that affect people at the front lines, and those people think, man, this policy is so dumb. Like, I can't actually serve the customers the way I'm supposed to. Or, I'll give an example here. I work with a lot of companies that end up getting purchased by private equity. And usually, the sales teams, within 3 to 6 months after they get purchased, the sales teams start to fall apart. Because private equity guys come in, they say, oh, here's a new commission plan, here's how all this stuff is going to work, and here's your target for the year. Completely based out of thin air because they're just looking at spreadsheets and they see this looks nice or that looks nice. The salespeople who are familiar with what's going on in the market are like, this is not happening. And they start calling me and asking for a new job, right? This is a result of not including, not involving the right to participate of your employees. There's one positive example, even though I just had a very negative experience with DoorDash just now. There's a positive example I've heard that DoorDash makes their employees, I believe it's DoorDash, they make their employees DoorDash once a quarter so they can actually experience the product themselves so that they have more input of understanding, okay, like what is it like to be a person using it? And this is all plays along, is getting close to the problem, getting people at the front lines to give you proper feedback in how you make your product, how you run your company, which leads to happier customers, which leads to happier employees as well, and leads to more profits. I will say that this component about right to participate is huge when it comes to employee retention. Being a recruiter, I see this all the time. This is like one of the core reasons that people end up leaving companies. So that's number 4, the right to participate. Number 5, how to use AI responsibly and in line with Catholic social teaching. Obviously, we have a bit of guidelines now that Magnificat Humanitas has come out, but figuring out how to truly implement that. What are the things that AI can never do? What could it do? And what should it do, perhaps, right? Maybe there's areas where AI should really be used in order to free up people's time so they can have more family time. Obviously, the risk Pope Leo points out largely is if we just focus on, most of the VCs are like, oh, we're going to get more and more output. There's not going to be any job layoffs. We're going to get more and more output. That's still going to leave people working 80-hour weeks and not having time for their family. We have to change the culture of this. It's not all about profit at all costs. I will also point out, I think that there's a lot of confusion as to the point that Pope Leo made about data collection and selling. People that I'm talking with so far have no idea. Like, I have a friend who's got a company that they collect data and sell it. Like, that's how they make money, right? They're collecting data on heavy machinery, and that's just not really widely available, and helping buyers and sellers make better decisions. And I was like, I think about this guy. I don't know if that's allowed anymore, right? Maybe it is, maybe it is. I don't fully know. But if you guys could sort through that and teach people, it would be very nice. I will give one example about the AI in business. We have a member of our community. Some of you may know him. His name is Zuhair. He runs a company called Autoglass Experts. And I think he's like 14 employees. He has intentionally refused to have AI answer the phones or to even do those automated like phone answering machine things. He has humans pick up the phone, and people are blown away. The fact that a human answered the phone, like, what? This is so unusual. He's in Charlotte, so it's a larger place, and people are used to this kind of digital nonsense. He speculates. He can't confirm it, but he speculates that leads to more repeat customers and more happy customers. So that's number 5. How to use AI responsibly in business and in line with Catholic social teaching. Number 6 is how to be truthful in our marketing and sales process. The best practices, to bring that up again, oftentimes lead to the obfuscation of our product, or just misleading information about our product, or using psychological tactics to get people to buy things, right? Pope Leo specifically talks about the fact that we cannot hack, I forget his terminology, but we can't hack human psychology just for certain outcomes. We have to be aware of that. So if you think about in marketing, whenever you buy a product, you're only unhappy with the product if it was misrepresented. If you were told that this is a high quality product that you're going to pay a premium for and it's going to last forever, you're like, oh, okay, cool. You buy it, it breaks before you get home, you're obviously upset because it wasn't true. So we need to help business owners understand that marketing and making sales go up is okay, but it has to be done in line with the entire company. When you have the marketing team going off and doing something completely unrelated, not talking to the product and sales team, you have this division, right? And somebody who came on the podcast a while back brought this very interesting point up, which then, when you have that, you have disunity in the company, effectively. And disunity is basically against the Trinity, right? The Trinity is unity. It's a very interesting, transcendental. When you have this disunity, you therefore have upset customers. So if you have unity, you can have happier customers. Now, I would say that this also applies to sales, right? I've worked almost my entire career in sales. It's very common to do high-pressure sales tactics. I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozi, but there's one thing that I just highly disagree with him on, which is that you should not be doing everything you can to just constantly get more sales out of a person. Maybe at some point they may not have true buyer's remorse, but if you're going to collect all that and you're going to take all this money from them, when it just doesn't seem right, there's a line to draw, basically. It's very hard to convince business owners against this because these are very common best practices, both in marketing and in sales, using psychological tactics or false marketing to get people to buy. So that's number 6, how to be truthful in our marketing and sales. Number 7, how not to ROI max. This is a Gen Z term for you guys. But what I mean is how to not focus on short-term ROI maximization. Obviously, businesses need money to continue existing, but the way that companies focus on short-term ROI maximization ends up leading to very disgruntled employees that are stressed, employees that are snapping at their wife when they get home or their kids, right? This is what happens when you're focused on pressuring everybody. And there's I think I believe if I remember correctly, Jack Welch promoted this, right? Just cut the bottom 10% of employees. That is literally just ROI maxing, right? It's just focusing on we're doing completely, there's no humanity involved in that process. It's just numbers, low, equal, you're gone, right? And we have to understand this because, again, the point of our lives is not to run the most profitable potential business, right? The point of our lives is to get to heaven and to take care of those people around us. I would give the example, too, of, let's say a private equity company does a roll-up of 5 or 10 companies. What's very common is that these companies might have a very positive brand in the market that they serve. A year, 2, 3 years later, they may not, because they've found ways to cut a little bit here, a little bit there. The product, this goes back to the marketing point, the product has now degraded, the quality of the product has degraded, yet the perception had remained positive because there was this built-up reputation. And as a result, in the end, the company actually loses sales, ultimately in the end, right? The private equity company may be able to do this, package it up, make their changes, and then flip it again in 3 or 4 years, and they make more money, but it ruins the product, right? Many people are laid off. Obviously, we have Pope Leo's example that he explicitly condemns the intentional mass layoff of people in order to increase ROI. He explicitly condemns that. And this is unfortunately what is happening a lot. I have encountered Catholic investors who I've said this exact point to. You cannot lay off a whole bunch of people just to increase your profits. And he was like, no, you should totally do that. And I was just dumbfounded, honestly. This guy claims to be a very Catholic person. I wasn't going to necessarily make a particular comment on this, but I do personally believe that we should have fewer. If you're going to be a publicly traded company, you should be a public benefits corporation. You should be a corporation that intentionally goes against the immorality of short-term ROI maximization, and you say that we will benefit the people that we serve. I personally also believe a lot more in, there's a book you guys might enjoy called Leaving a Legacy by Johann Kurtz, and he argues for many people to focus on family-owned businesses for a long period of time because there's more continuity, right? There's more continuity, and the way you treat the people that work for you is much different. We have seen the destruction of pensions in America, where people used to be treated as somebody that was kind of under the care of the employer. It's no longer the case, right? It is everything oriented towards short-term, like let's get rid of you as easily as possible. I know it's different in other countries. I've had an employee in Spain, and I know that, for example, like letting somebody go in Spain is very difficult. I think it takes like 3 months to do properly. So yes, I would say that is a critique of that, and I think that there is a very negative outcome of this short-term quarterly earnings thing. I'm not a fan, obviously, as you may have noticed. So, in general, I think that people just need to understand that the employees or the employers need to understand. Does the way they run their company help these people flourish, or are they focused on short-term earnings for the sake of earnings, and as a result, are they harming the people who work for them, or potentially, cheapening the product itself? So that's number 7, how not to short-term ROI max. Number 8 is proper compensation and benefits. Business owners really, really need education on this. Things like the just wage theory, right? Somebody should be paid a fair wage for their family. This is the employment laws in America even make this very difficult now, but I think there should be pursuit of this in some way. The way I run my company is, again, I have contractors, they're all overseas. I ask them, how much money do you need for your family situation on a monthly basis? So I pay commissions on top of this, but I say, what is your base pay that you need in order for your family to be taken care of? Based on, maybe they have a spouse who's also working, but I just ask them. I don't verify this. I hire all these people through referrals, people that I know, so I have some amount of trust. But whatever they say, if I can make that work for my budget, I pay that. And then I pay commissions on top of it. And I also pay profits as well. Per every quarter, we pay out some profit bonuses. But this idea needs to be understood that people are not fair market wage does not mean it is a moral wage. Okay, it's very common to just say, hey, we're just going to pay whatever's fair market, but you should pay a moral wage, in my opinion. And it's going to be very challenging. This is like, I have sympathy for people who have to hire in the U.S. and who have to deal with these challenges, because in the coming years, we're going to see a lot of companies just fully replacing their staff for AI. And if that's your competitor, what are you going to do?
Hey there, quick interruption. Before we get back to our guest, let's talk about stewardship. A lot of the capital allocators and investors who listen to this show tell me that they want to put their capital to work supporting other Catholic businesses. The problem is, finding those builders has always been incredibly difficult. That is why we launched a dedicated investor newsletter over at catholicinvestors.co or catholicdealflow.com if that's easier to remember. When you subscribe, you aren't signing up for a fund, an investment platform, or any kind of advisory service. It's simple. We publish a regular newsletter cycle that shares strictly factual, unhyped business overviews and metrics from active Catholic-led ventures that are looking for capital. There are no sales pitches, no transaction fees. It is a passive digital bulletin board delivered straight to your inbox so you can do your own independent vetting. If you want to see who is building in the ecosystem and seeking capital, go to catholicdealflow.com and join the newsletter list today. All right, back to the show.
Like, your prices are going to have to, your prices are going to have to come down, because most likely, in order to compete with you, their product might be lower quality, they'll reduce their prices. So you're going to have this bifurcation of people who are leaning into AI everything and then human everything. And I think it's a very tough challenge. I would personally argue that you should lean into the human aspect. So get AI to do things that help your humans become more efficient, but lean into the human aspect where, like the example before, when people call, they know they're getting a human. So you can actually market that we are a human specific. You will talk to a human. This is not AI. And if you do that, I think you can actually have a positive outcome. My belief is that eventually people are going to have so much fatigue about the nonsense of having to deal with AI all the time, and it will dehumanize them without them even knowing. They're going to feel less, that they will prefer to pay even a bit more for humans. I do believe this will happen. This is a gut feeling, though. No data points to go on. Another challenge of this is if you're going to offer more pay to your employees, hypothetically, you do have lower margins naturally, which means you have a less sustainably profitable company for the long term. And people point this out to me. But I believe it is another way to really lean into being a saint through being an entrepreneur, that you trust in God for the outcomes. Like you work hard, obviously, but you're not saying like, oh, I could have 80% margins, but because I want to pay these people fairly, I'm going to have 50% margins or 30% margins. And yes, you have reduced the ability to just stash cash, pay yourself more, whatever, but you're doing the right thing, and you're actively choosing to be more trusting in God's provisions for you, for your family, and for the families who work for you. On the benefit side, it's very important that we don't skip over this. There needs to be a solution. I think there are some solutions out there. If you're a Catholic running a business, you cannot offer benefits that provide abortion healthcare, abortion services, or contraception. Like these things cannot be included in your benefits plan. And I know it's very difficult, especially in California. There's a couple other states I think make it challenging. But business owners aren't thinking about this half the time. And they don't think about the moral repercussions that they might have to face. So this is number 8, how to provide proper compensation and benefits. Number 9 is how to be proper stewards of creation. Obviously, I work in clean tech, so maybe I'm a bit biased, but or maybe I'm just a Francis fan. I don't know. But people need to make the more sustainable choice whenever they can. And I come from a very red part of the country. I'm from Wisconsin. Like nobody talks about climate change unless they're calling it a joke potentially. But I can say that I got into clean tech because I was so blown away by the technologies that could be better products, cheaper, or the same price, and greener. So there's an example of a cement company that uses carbon in how they produce the cement. The cement becomes, I forget the exact numbers, like 15 or 20% stronger. The price to make it is exactly the same, and it's greener. So it's using less carbon, there's fewer carbon emissions. So there are many such examples like this. I see it all the time with my clients. And we need to encourage people to make these decisions. Again, it's not a left or a right thing. It is a smart money thing. They will actually increase their profitability in most cases because most of the time there is no green premium. It's just the right thing to do. It's reducing waste, wasted electricity, wasted water, wasted inputs, or designing your products in a way that they're not just ending up in a landfill. They're able to be disassembled more easily. Some products that are very cheap to manufacture are very difficult to recycle. Right, so we saw this with the solar panel industry. The solar panels have a relatively long lifespan, so they're only figuring this out now. That taking them apart and then taking those components and recycling them is very challenging. Some friends of mine are in this recycling industry, so they've engaged with the manufacturers to say, if you do these things a little differently, it might cost a little bit more, but at the end, you can actually take those inputs back into your supply chain and have a circular supply chain, right? And there's a lot of examples. I could go on for hours about this, but in case you needed more prodding, Pope Leo just mentioned that technology that we have should be used to create more sustainable technology. He was specifically referencing the data center challenge. And if you needed more pushing, in Genesis it states that we are called to be stewards of the earth. So that's number 9, stewardship for creation, how to be good stewards. Now, number 10 is subsidiarity. This is something that people love to talk about, and they almost never understand how to do it properly. Some examples, and I'll end at the end of this one with an example of a guy who I really respect. Hopefully will be in your research soon. There's one way you can do subsidiarity. You can respect local brands. You can, when you purchase a company, you don't have to roll it into your brand. There might be some value in that potentially, but you can have it respect the local area. You empower leaders at the local level to make decisions without having everything have to go up to head office, right? When I was at a recruitment company before I started my own, and we got purchased, everything changed after we got bought. It was just nonsense, left and right. Like the boss and the founder of the company who hired me, we had a great relationship with, and you could see that it killed him every time I was trying to get something done, and he's like, I can't do anything about it because the new CEO doesn't care, right? That's not his words, that's basically what it came down to. So empower leadership at the local level to make decisions, and then empower frontline employees. I like to give this example. I'm sure all of us have had a customer service discussion where we're like, we need to do something very simple, right? My order wasn't delivered, I want it refunded. I'm a big fan of Amex, but I needed to cancel one of my cards because I didn't need it anymore. I had 2 others. I contacted customer success. It's obvious, I just want to cancel my card. I'm literally saying how much I love Amex, but the guy had to ask me 15 questions. Keep asking and asking and asking and say, are you sure about this? Are you sure about that? He knew the right thing to do, but because some arbitrary rules said he can't just give me the right thing without asking those questions, if he didn't do that, he probably would have been either fired or had some kind of infraction marked against him. So you have to empower the local employees to do the right thing. 15 questions later, he elevates me to his supervisor. They know after 2 questions what I want and what the right thing is to do, but they're forced to ask 4 more. And it's just it's total nonsense. We've all experienced something to this effect, right? And this is an example of the opposite of subsidiarity, where you don't allow employees to handle these things at the local level. By the way, for what it's worth, subsidiarity is literally the secret to scaling a business because you have to intentionally get everything. You become the bottleneck as a builder. I'm facing this right now a lot. You become the bottleneck, and if you can get other people to do the work, you are less of a bottleneck. Now, here's a living example of this. There's a guy named Dr. Daniel Tatahe. I would encourage all of you to potentially invite him to speak to your classes. He's an amazing guy. I look up to him a lot. If I remember his story correctly, he's from Peru originally. He was a dentist there. He moved to the US, but he couldn't practice as a dentist, so he had to start from the bottom, work his way up again. Eventually starts his own practice after getting frustrated with the way private equity was doing things in the industry. And within a year of starting his own practice, he actually ended up acquiring another one because the guy was retiring, and he just this is in Madison, Wisconsin, by the way. And so he acquires one, and he beat a private equity offer that was higher in dollar value than he was offering. But he beat them because the guy trusted him. He's like, I know this guy from my community, I'm going to do it. Over the next 9 years, he ended up acquiring something like 13 or 15 more practices. I forget the exact number. But he acquired a lot of practices. Every single time, private equity offered more money. Okay? But he was able to beat them because of his reputation, and he was in that local market. These were all in the Madison area. What he did was, I mentioned before, he kept the local brand. Madison is not a huge place, by the way. So he could have easily justified changing the brand, but he kept it to those local neighborhood communities. He kept that as the name, and he would just put, Mercy Dental Group Company on there. He does other things too, where obviously they have some back office support to take care of all the finance and the insurance billing stuff, just dealing with bureaucracy. But he made sure that the local leaders could make decisions as they saw fit. And this is not specifically related to subsidiarity, but one thing I really like what he does is when it comes to preferential treatment for the poor, they, once a month, I might be getting this slightly wrong, I believe it's once a month, they go out as a team. I think they're doing about 22 million in revenue. So I don't know how many employees, like 140 or something employees. They go out as a team with their hygienist, their dentist, and they go and they serve the homeless who can't get any sort of dental treatment. And they have one group that they spun off to be a nonprofit for the people who can't afford dental treatment. They will that one location serves all of their people who cannot afford it. So this guy is amazing. I really, really respect him, and he's a great example of subsidiarity. So that's number 10. So just to recap the 10 of these. Number 1, how to uphold dignity of the human person. Number 2, how to recognize that we don't own anything. Number 3, how to uphold and promote family life, starting with ourselves and then, of course, with policies. Number 4, how to integrate the right to participate with our employees. Number 5, how to use AI responsibly and in line with Catholic social teaching. Number 6, how to be truthful in our marketing and sales. Number 7, how not to be maximizing for short-term ROI. Number 8, how to compensate and provide proper Catholic social teaching aligned benefits. And number 9, stewardship for creation, how to be good stewards of creation. And number 10, how to integrate subsidiarity. Now, in closing, I've got a couple more remarks. I'm sure you guys are getting sick of me at some point here. This is only possible if we're going to have this future, if we're going to have a positive future. It's only possible, I genuinely believe this, if all of you individually answer your calling to teach the people that are going to be in your classrooms in the coming years. It is only possible if you answer your call, if you step up to the plate and take an opportunity. Now, key things to remember as we do this is that there are advantages. I've mentioned a few advantages to be gained when you treat people properly. You have better employee retention, recruiting, oftentimes better products. Potentially, you can even charge more. So there's benefits, right? Because the truth resonates with people. It resonates with everybody. And when you put humans first, humans really appreciate that. However, just because there are positive outcomes does not mean that there will not be trade-offs. There will certainly be opportunities where a leader can choose to put ROI or just increased profits over humans. They can choose to put technology or fame over humans. There will be these chances. And as Andreas mentioned earlier, it's very important that this becomes a natural reaction, that there is no thinking involved. When the opportunity presents itself, it's just no. They know how to act because it's been drilled into their heads. If we want to, the thing that's very exciting, obviously there's a lot of potential challenges in front of us. But if we consider Pope Leo's most recent words, we have the opportunity to build a civilization of love. One like we have never seen before, ever, in the history of mankind. Partially because the entire world is in building mode. Everybody is after, having the most powerful AI. There is so much energy to build right now. So we have this kind of momentum that we get to be part of. That's one component. But another reason why we have this opportunity is because we have the tools of AI. These AI tools can be used for good. So we have the opportunity because there's the momentum, and we also have the technology because we have these new tools to build a civilization of love. And as Pope Leo referenced, we can all pick up our tools and do our part in rebuilding the civilization. Everybody has tools in front of them and a part of the wall to rebuild. And all of you especially have very important roles to play. It's almost like you're teaching all the people who are going to use the tools, right? And these are not just people putting one brick or two bricks to help. These are people who are like the supers of their like large section of the wall, right? There's a lot of outcome that can come through you guys doing the right thing. If we do this right, I genuinely believe, this is the reason I do Catholic Founders, I genuinely believe that we can completely shift the paradigm of all capitalism to one that is human-focused and human-centered, where people are always put above technology and profits. And again, the only way we're going to do this is if we internalize these things. You have to internalize it so that it just naturally flows out of you while you teach the students. They have to internalize it so that they know what to do. And I'll recall this point that I mentioned before. You have a unique calling. All of you were born very specifically for this task, right? My understanding of psychology is that your beliefs are determined primarily by the time you're 5 years old. And you didn't, I don't know any 3 or 4 year old who was going out and determining who their friends were, right? Maybe some, but unlikely. So who you're born to, the time you were born, all of these things, you were very specifically put here to be in these roles and to be educating the people that you will be educating. You were led to your faith, of course, too, right? That's something not to take for granted. And in the coming years, tens of thousands of people will be educated and formed in your classrooms and at your pulpits. And we can turn those people into the builders of the civilization of love that Pope Leo is asking us to build. So I'll end with a closing quote from the encyclical, which is far more eloquent than I can ever be. In the era of artificial intelligence, when human dignity is threatened by new forms of dehumanization, ours is the pressing duty to remain profoundly human. We must lovingly safeguard the grandeur of humanity, bestowed upon us and revealed in its fullness in Christ. the splendor of which no machine can ever replace. Thank you all.